All right, guys, going to be jumping into the week 2 first look build. So guys, last week through and through ended up being a pretty easy week. A lot of the things that we predicted to happen did happen. Pretty much a sweat-free week. This was the first look build that I handed out to you guys last week, and I'm a little bit offended by the Jordan Love ownership at 1.3. Kind of crazy there, but thankfully we were able to take advantage of it. I ended up going with Romeo Doubs in this instead of Deion Jackson. I had mentioned it was either being Deion Jackson or Romeo Doubs to close out our flex. Now, obviously, I ended up putting him at the receiver position, but this is something I'm going to do each week. Is I'm always going to enter the first look build just so that we can see how it went. I do want to call this out as well. Like the min price defense, I was pretty shocked at their ownership as well, 3%. Like we've been through this for the past year now, over a year now. Basically, every min price defense has gone positive points over the last year, or the lowest price defense. Continue to hammer that home. And if you look at the difference between the chalk Washington Commanders that were $700 more, you were able to save a lot of money. You know, the Commanders put up 11 points, they put up 8. You're able to maybe pay up for CMC or Austin Eckler or Tyreek Hill. But yeah, I mean, last week was pretty fun. Gave out a lot of just awesome plays. Pretty much all the quarterback values that we were on hit. Tight end value, Hayden Hurst hit. Good stuff there. I was going to do like a takes montage, but you know, if you guys took the advice last week, you had yourself a good week. So like last week, I'm going to go position by position, breaking down my favorite plays at each position. Now, I've only got through about half the games for watching film, and I do put a point of emphasis on watching film before I give out takes. You know, that's part of the reason why we were able to end up on Jordan Love. That's part of the reason why we were able to end up on Hayden Hurst as a really good tight end play. You know, it can be little finds like that really do add up for that week, but also in the long term. You know, we can watch all the stats we want, but sometimes that doesn't tell us the full picture. That's why I like to watch all the games to have that full picture. But now let's go ahead and get into the breakdown of week 2. All right, so getting into it this week, I do think this week is kind of the exact opposite of last week. Last week, it was super easy to just find reasons to continue to pay down at the quarterback position. You know, that's how I was able to give out Derek Carr as a decent play. That's how I was able to end up on Jordan Love or Sam Howell as well. All those players ended up being able to 3X, and then that allowed you to pay up for the studs on the slate. This slate's a little bit different. We're going to have some good quarterbacks in some good spots, starting with Patrick Mahomes, the highest priced quarterback on the slate at 8.3. Is that too high of a price? That's the biggest question mark I have. Now, obviously, he should have had a better game than he had, okay? We saw Kadarius Toney make some drops. Really, the whole receiving core was just not that good besides really MVS. I mean, Rice ended up making some plays that any NFL receiver should make, but really the most impressive pass catcher to me was honestly Noah Gray. But with Kelsey most likely back, you know, they had 10 days rest. That's going to help Patrick Mahomes out a lot. And then obviously we really like the matchup there with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Guys, Anthony Richardson, I'm not going to say he looked great, but he did look good. And Jacksonville gave up a bunch of points to them in that offense. That offense was not supposed to be good, right? And maybe we were just wrong about the Colts, but honestly, I think it was more the Jaguars defense just not being that good. And this game is a game that should be a shootout. Now, the only thing that we don't like is look at this last game against the Jags in the playoffs. Only 16.6 DraftKings points there for Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that's going to occur again. I think he's going to have a good game, especially given how bad the Jaguars looked on defense. Now, that might be a little bit too much to pay for him. I think we could actually end up rolling with Josh Allen. Josh Allen currently is my favorite quarterback play on the slate, just given the matchup with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I am recording this before Monday Night Football. I have no clue how that game is going to look. That could change my perception of Josh Allen as a play. Hopefully not. Hopefully he has a good enough game. And to me, I'm expecting Josh Allen to score, you know, anywhere between 14 to 20 DraftKings points against the Jets. The Jets are a good defense. The Las Vegas Raiders, however, not that good of a defense. They made Russell Wilson look pretty good again. He only threw for like 177 passing yards to Russell Wilson did, but he did throw for 2 touchdowns. Okay. And that's with his receiving core being pretty banged up. So Josh Allen at 7.9 is probably going to be the player I'm rolling with. And I think the route to go is going to be to pay up at the quarterback position. I still don't mind the idea of Justin Herbert. He should be in for a good game. Only 1 touchdown in the last game. It's kind of unfortunate. Josh Kelly got a touchdown. Austin Eckler got a rushing touchdown. You know, one of those could have easily went to Herbert's way and been a much better game for him. And I will say Trevor Lawrence in that same game is also an intriguing play. And to me, it's kind of deciding between Trevor Lawrence or Josh Allen, like which one has the biggest ceiling. And I will say, guys, Trevor Lawrence has been a quarterback that has frustrated me so far in his career because he has all the tools to be elite. His issue was a lack of consistency and really just missing the short yardage throws. And he only had like 1 bad throw, and it was kind of just, I don't know if he was throwing it away or if it was just a bad throw. The pick 6 that occurred, the one INT that he had, was a throw to Tank Bigsby, where Tank Bigsby is making like a leaping catch around his body. And when I watched it live, I was just like, that was a weird throw from Trevor Lawrence. And then I watched it back. I'm like, maybe he was honestly just trying to throw it over Tank Bigsby's head. And Bigsby just used his athleticism to get his hands on it. Either way, fluky play. He was pretty sharp throughout the rest of the game. And obviously, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne. He is loaded with weapons. And so I think he's going to continue to play well. So really, I don't know. I think we might be looking at Trevor Lawrence instead of Josh Allen now. And then from there, like if we need the salary left over, I still think Jordan Love is too cheap. I know the matchup with Atlanta is going to be a little bit more difficult, but I thought Bryce Young was okay-ish. Like Bryce Young doesn't really have the best pass catchers. That's why I thought Hayden Hurst would be a decent tight end play. Obviously, DJ Chark being out doesn't help him at all. But Jordan Love looked good. 15 for 27. Some people might see that and say that wasn't that good of a game. That wasn't that efficient. A lot of his plays were made on 3rd and 4th down. I think it was like 8 for 10 on 3rd or 4th down. I mean, he was pretty clutch. And the biggest takeaway I had is that he didn't mess up those situations. And part of the reason why I liked him as a play was honestly Matt LaFleur's system. Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur are pretty much a match made in heaven together. I mean, they operate very well together, and LaFleur has been using his talents very well. You look at a lot of the receptions last week, a lot of them were pretty wide open. And so I honestly think we could see that again in this game as well. Now, he'll get a bigger bump if Christian Watson is healthy and active in this game. We also need to watch for Jaden Reed and also Aaron Jones. I would say if those two players sit, it goes both ways because, all right, Jordan Love's going to throw the football more, but also I think the defensive attention is going to be on a little bit more, especially if Aaron Jones is out because you're taking out another dynamic playmaker and replacing it with A.J. Dillon, who's more of a bruiser. Yeah, it just won't be as good of an offensive flow. Still 5.5. That's a very cheap price tag. So recap, looking at Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Josh Allen. And for me in week 1, I'm just going to go with Trevor Lawrence currently. If that needs to change, I can make some adjustments. So let's go ahead and move into the running back position here, guys. So at running back, it was pretty easy last week. We were able to just pay up for the studs. And I do think we're going to want to do that, at least with CMC. The news before week 1 was, CMC is not going to have a workhorse workload. Elijah Mitchell's going to get a lot of run. And what happened? CMC got 22 carries and had 5 targets. He caught 3 of those. 27 opportunities in that game against Pittsburgh, which was supposed to be a good defense. Now this Los Angeles Rams team looked a lot better than a lot of people thought, but there was still a lot of plays to be made that the Seahawks just didn't make. 8.9 is a lot to pay up for him. At the same time, if he's going to be that heavily involved, it's going to be tough for us not to pay up for him at the running back position, especially because we're going to have kind of a lack of clarity behind him, especially given the matchups that we have. So for now, I'm just paying up for CMC again. And then from there, I feel like we do have a lot of good running back choices to choose from. Like Austin Eckler, sure, we could still play him if we wanted to. I'm not too worried about that Tennessee Titans defense. Jamal Williams, I thought would struggle just because you want to exploit Tennessee via the passing game. We could see Austin Eckler get a little bit more involved in the passing game as a result. Saquon Barkley going against the Arizona Cardinals, they're favored to win in that game. Let me just double check that. Yeah, they're favored by 4.5 points, which is actually not as much as Washington being favored by 7 points in week 1. But we did see the other B. Robinson, Brian Robinson, have a pretty good game. And Saquon Barkley, even in a game that was a blowout, he still ended up with 17 opportunities and was still a pretty good player in that game. Obviously, against the Cardinals, you don't expect that game to be a blowout. He is a very intriguing play. His ownership might be a little bit down just because of that matchup as well, or just because of how he looked last week. Very interesting there. Bijan Robinson did look really good on film. The issue is that he got out-snapped by Tyler Algier, who also looked very good. I don't know if we can trust him. Tony Pollard does make sense as a very good play at this price tag. I do want to see how the New York Jets defense does tonight, though. That might shift how much I want to be on Tony Pollard. For right now, he's like a top 3 running back option to me, though, unless that New York Jets front is just extremely good. From there, I do like the idea of playing Travis Etienne, but here's the issue. I don't want to play both of them. Like last week, I thought we could get away with playing Jordan Love and Aaron Jones together because I thought Aaron Jones would be involved in the passing game. I do think that's going to be the situation here as well with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, although I don't think it's as likely to get like a double dip like we did last week with Aaron Jones and Jordan Love in a lot of build because, well, there's just a lot more options in this offense. That being said, we did see Travis Etienne catch all 5 of his targets last week. He rushed the ball 18 times as well. Actually, I think Aaron Jones is a very good example as to how Travis Etienne is probably supposed to be used by the Jaguars. That's why they brought in Tank Bigsby. Etienne just looked too good to not get the ball. He was one of the most impressive players, I thought, last week compared to how we looked last season. A lot more decisive, hitting the correct holes, a little bit more explosive as well. I don't know, last year it just seemed like there was some slight hesitation. It didn't seem like he had that this year thus far. So he is someone I'm certainly looking at, but it's like, do we really want to play both of them? we will see. We might be adjusting our builds as we go. And then that being said, there are plenty of other running back options that I do think that we can be on. Okay. James Conner was heavily involved. Probably should get a few more catches. I'm very curious as to how James Cook will do tonight on Monday Night Football. He could be someone that's, in retrospect, he gets 20 opportunities or something, 5 catches at this price tag going against the Las Vegas Raiders. He might be someone that we're looking at. AJ Dillon, if Aaron Jones is out, he's going to be a difficult click, but he will probably be the correct click. And I say difficult because, man, from his rookie year to his sophomore and now third year, he hasn't really improved that much. He'll catch some passes out of the backfield and probably have 4 catches, 12 touches. I would say he has a good chance to score a rushing touchdown as well if Aaron Jones is out. And he'd be a guy that we're probably just forced to play at 5.9 because it would be tough to pass up on those opportunities. But man, he has not looked good. That's for sure. I can see why the Packers were trying to trade for Jonathan Taylor. And then just 2 other plays that I want to mention as well. We got Dameon Pierce here. And I feel like this is important to call out because when I was watching that film, I was thinking, I'm like, man, the Texans really stalled out some drives by not just force feeding Pierce the football. And I can't imagine when they're watching their film back this week, that they're not coming to that same conclusion. They were getting 4 or 5 yards of carry on first down with him, and then kind of just ditching it. They brought in Devin Singletary a lot, and also that stalled out a bunch of drives as well. Heck, they had a decent chance to really be competitive in that game. Now, that was a classic Baltimore Ravens gritty type win where it's just ugly, but then they ended up blowing out a team. But it was definitely a mistake on the Texans' part by not getting more involved. And now you get a matchup with the Colts, a team that literally just got torched by Tank Bigsby scoring a touchdown, Travis Etienne dominating as well. And Dameon Pierce looks super good. Now, it's going to be risky because he really didn't have that many touches, 11 touches, 3 targets. That's only 14 opportunities. We want more than that, but the matchup is definitely going to be better, and the price tag is pretty good as well. Rachaad White's another one where, yeah, he looked bad, but he did have 19 opportunities. Now, that was only for 49 yards, so not the best game, but he does get a good matchup with Chicago now. A lot of Bears fans will tell you that their lines were terrible, and that's the reason that they lost. There might be something to that, like the defensive line didn't get any pressure, at least to the linebackers. Like the linemen were able to get to the linebackers pretty easily. And so White should be in for a better game, especially if he's going to be playing that much, especially if he's going to get that much opportunities at that price. That's certainly something we need to be looking at. And another one that I think is just worth calling out, guys, is going to be Javonte Williams as well. Okay. He looked a lot better than I thought he would. And he ended up getting 19 opportunities. Now, the matchup with Washington, it doesn't seem, I don't know. They didn't look bad, that's for sure. But they didn't look as dominant as they did last year, I'll say. That might just be a week 1 thing. We never know. But Javonte Williams is certainly someone that I think as the season progresses, we're going to be like, man, how do we see him at 5.6, not instantly click him in there, especially with how good he looked, considering the circumstances. And then, yes, Baltimore, we still need to get news on maybe who's going to be the RB1 there. I don't think Gus Edwards looked that good. Justice Hill was fine, but, what are we going to do there? Roschon Johnson, he did look good in the kind of end of the game there. It'll be interesting to see how many snaps he gets. I do think Zach Moss could be an interesting play as well. He is going to be the RB1 when he is back, especially with Evan Hall getting injured in that game. Deion Jackson really just getting benched because he was terrible. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. 2 fumbles, had a costly drop, and sure, he had one 20-yard rush get called back that was just a stupid play by a receiver, but he didn't look the part. It was a terrible game. His worst game probably as a NFL running back. That being said, you got Zach Moss there, who maybe will be back. If he is back at 7.4, definitely becomes an interesting play, interesting flex play, especially going against Houston, a team in the previous season gave up a lot of rushing production. And just last week, they gave up 2 touchdowns to Justice Hill, and Gus Edwards had a touchdown. I think they gave up 4 rushing touchdowns, which, yeah, that's going to lead to the Colts definitely being an interesting click. Maybe that just leads to Anthony Richardson being a sneaky play. So let's go ahead and move on. I know I touched about the running backs a ton. Let's go ahead and move on into the receivers. So at receivers, guys, I will say I was hoping that Jamar Chase's price tag would dip a little bit more. It was pretty clear Joe Burrow was just not able to get enough traction on the football due to the wet conditions. He actually had T. Higgins open a bunch and just a little bit off on a lot of plays. Now, sure, some of that was probably rust, but it was pretty clear. Heck, even on these little screens, you could tell instead of passing it, he was pushing it on these screens. So, you don't expect that to occur again. And the Baltimore Ravens defense didn't look elite. I thought CJ Stroud actually looked kind of sharp, at least with his decision making. Now, whether they're the correct decision, CJ Stroud looked better than I thought. Let's put it that way. He could be an interesting play. If you are playing Josh Allen, you're going to be playing Diggs. Then from there, I do find this price point of Davante Adams to be extremely interesting here, guys. He had 9 targets in this game, still had 6 receptions and 66 yards. The thing was, Jacoby Myers was heavily involved. Kind of, don't want to say as expected, but you expected him to be kind of the second pass getter in that offense, and that's what happened. Now Jacoby Myers is going to be out with a concussion. That might force feed Davante Adams maybe 12 targets this week, and it really depends on how the Buffalo Bills secondary looks this week against the Jets to determine whether or not we're going like all in on Davante Adams at 7.6. But that is certainly a play that has my interest. And then after that, we do have Garrett Wilson. I'm curious to see how he does this Monday Night Football game. Calvin Ridley certainly lit it up. If you're playing Trevor Lawrence, I almost think that we have to be playing Calvin Ridley. He looked very good. Now 11 targets, 8 receptions, 101 receiving yards, and a touch. The only caution I have is that we saw last year, and I don't think this is the case, I want to make that clear, but we did see last year, like Christian Kirk have this awesome 4-game stretch. Then Zay Jones have an awesome 4-game stretch. A little bit of Evan Ingram, where it just seemed more matchup based that was getting exploited. But to me, it was actually Trevor Lawrence force feeding Calvin Ridley the ball, and actually it almost felt like he over force fed Calvin Ridley on Calvin Ridley's touchdown. He had the second string tight end wide open in the end zone, and he ends up finding Calvin Ridley like 2.5 seconds later wide open in the end zone as well. But that was interesting. And there was another play, I think it was Evan Ingram, then on I need to find the play because it was pretty awesome. I want to show you guys. All right, so here's the play. You'll see Evan Ingram spring wide open right there. He should have hit him, right? Like, it's pretty obvious that this was the read, and like this is a bad ball. Like, this probably should be picked off, right? Like, come on. That's what I was saying. A little bit too much of tunnel vision, and maybe that gets coached up this week. But watch this play. I mean, obviously makes the defender miss here. A little bit lucky there, right? The defender falling into him. It's kind of a lucky play that springs this big. But watch Travis Etienne here, guys. This was an awesome play by Travis Etienne. Gets out there, makes a lead block. Unfortunately, Calvin Ridley steps out of bounds there, but super fun play on film to see that one. And it's weird. Trevor Lawrence just seems to get away with those mistakes, if you will. And yes, looking at guys, it does feel like we already have a little bit too much Jags, and almost like if we have this many Jaguars players, we might need to run it back with a Chiefs player. And for what it's worth, that is going to be, I believe, the highest scoring game on the slate at 51.1. So it's not like too egregious to be going in on that game. Now looking at it, I do think Keenan Allen is going to be someone we go back to the well with. Now, he only had 9 targets, which was slightly off from his 10 targets that he typically averages with Justin Herbert as his quarterback when he plays the full game. I do love the price tag here. He didn't have a touchdown. Kind of once again, Austin Eckler had a rushing touchdown. Josh Kelly had a rushing touchdown, still had 9 targets, still had double-digit points. Seems like a very safe play, especially going against that Tennessee Titans defense that, Derek Carr had a slightly above average game manager type of game last week against them. I expect Justin Herbert to be able to exploit that defense a little bit more. So as long as Keenan Allen's role continues to stay the same, which it seems like it will, this seems to be a great price tag for him as well. And then looking at it, guys, just continuing on, just some other options that I think are going to be good plays. Yeah, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, I do think that they're going to bounce back this week. I do want to call it T. Higgins as well. He had 8 targets, and man, 4 of them were extremely close. 2 of them would have been touchdowns, I believe, if frustrating for Joe Burrow as well. And I really do think it just comes down to the ball being a little bit too slick for Joe Burrow and probably a little bit of rust on his part. The good news is T. Higgins was open. You expect him to have a bounce back game, and we're getting him at a pretty cheap price tag. Now, the Chicago Bears are getting, at least their offensive coordinator is getting bashed by Justin Fields just not being a good quarterback. It's a little bit of a Packer bias, I guess, there, but I feel like there's no way they come out of that film session without saying, all right, we need to get DJ Moore the ball more. 2 targets is simply not enough. They need to find ways to get him touches that are manufactured. Now, yes, he was going against Alexander, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and also this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense actually looked pretty good last week. Minus, I don't want to say they look really good because Jordan Addison was wide open, Justin Jefferson tore them up, and even KJ Osborne should have had a better game. Okay, the Bucs defense can hinder his production, but once again, I do think that they lead that film session kind of an overcorrection, and they force feed DJ Moore the ball this week. It's a very cheap price tag as well. Cortland Son's still someone I think we could play at his price tag. I don't really get the price tag. I don't know what this dude has to do to earn respect. Now, he only had 5 targets. I guess that could be the reason why only 32 yards, but he did have a touchdown as well. And then lastly, I do really think Nico Collins is at a cheap price tag again this week. He was at a cheap price tag last week. I was a little bit shocked at how cheap he was and kind of how low owned he was. It was weird. The receptions total for him last week was 3, and actually Vegas was favoring the under there. He ended up doubling that up with 6 receptions and 11 targets. Like, if you were following along in the preseason, that is what seemed like was going to happen. I honestly got shied off because of the Vegas lines. I was like, three receptions like that, okay, and they were favoring it as well. Like, all right, I'll believe you guys, and that was definitely a mistake. Now he does have that matchup with the Colts, the team that just got tore up by the Jaguars. If he's going to be force-fed targets, like it seems like he's going to be, this is a great price tag for him, and possibly a really good matchup as well. So he's someone I'll be playing at 4.8 at least at the start of the week right now. Like I said, CJ Stroud, I thought he looked pretty bad this preseason, and then I thought he looked very sharp against the Ravens. Now, box score might not say that, and he didn't really have any wow plays, but he was making the correct reads most of the time and was making them in a fast manner. And it seemed like he had a clear trust in Nico Collins as well. And then for what it's worth, I am kind of wondering why we're getting this price tag for Jahan Dotson. I mean, it's a very strange price tag. Sure, he's going against Denver, but the defense did not look as elite as it was last year, I would say. Not even elite, just not as good. And it's week 1. I don't want to draw any conclusions really from week 1 too much, because typically we see it regress back in week 2, and the teams that we kind of thought would be good are the teams that are good. A lot of times it's just one off week. That happens. But regardless, I don't really think the role is going to change too much for him. I just don't really get why we're seeing him at 4.9. Was impressive in the preseason. That continued over this week. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 9 DK points. Like, sure, we want a little bit more than that, but at the same time, if that's going to be his floor, which it kind of seems like it will be, that is super low of a price. And then Romeo Doubs as well, just for what it's worth as well here, guys. I know I'm probably taking a little bit too long, but I want to give you guys the full thought process for this slate. If Christian Watson is ruled out again, I kind of think he's going to be active, but if he is out, Romeo Doubs becomes definitely an interesting play, especially at this price tag. Now, he was supposed to play limited snaps. That's why he was pretty low owned by a lot of people. Still ended up with 5 targets and obviously had 2 receiving touchdowns. Jaden Reed's currently banged up, so they're going to need him. They're going to need him big time. And at this cheap price tag, it'd be someone that I think we'd just be forced into playing, especially give him another week to be healthier. And he didn't look slower or anything. Like, he didn't look like he was bothered by a hamstring injury. So that's all good. Very cheap price tag for him. Honestly, it feels like we're going to be trying to figure out which one of those players, Nico Collins, Romeo Doubs, or Jahan Dotson, that we're going to be going in on. Guys, Puka had a good game. No shock. I'm just kidding. No shock there. Awesome to see Puka have a good game. Kind of was in a little bit of a Cooper Kupp type role. And for what it's worth, guys, if we get news that Jaden Reed's going to be active, it doesn't seem like it was anything serious. So I do expect him to be active, but we just need to make sure on that. He did end up with 5 targets and 48 receiving yards. Like, he had a decent game there. And at 3.4, if once again, if Christian Watson's out, that's definitely still an interesting play there. Okay, so now moving on into the tight end position here. I'm kind of probably going to be doing the same thing I did last week, which just kind of just punting down to the values here. And so Jake Ferguson was pretty involved in the pass game like we thought he would be. Unfortunately, he was only able to turn 7 targets into 2 receptions for 11 yards. That game was a pretty fast blowout, but once again, looking at him compared to Dalton Schultz, I feel like they're the same player. So we're getting Dalton Schultz in the Dallas Cowboys offense at 3.3. Like, obviously we like that. And I say that because let's look back on Dalton Schultz's price tags last year. That's what I'm saying. We're basically getting him at a disc. And I don't know what your guys' takeaway from this is going to be, but Luke Musgrave should have had 2 touchdowns. Okay. The first one, I really don't know why he stopped running, but he basically kind of stopped on a route and Jordan Love ended up just missing him. I put the blame on Musgrave there. And then later on in the game, Jordan Love flicks a pass where he's wide open and he stumbles on his feet, trips at the 3-yard line. At the very least, you could say he should have had another touchdown. At the same time, the big plays were there. Still had 4 targets, still had 50 receiving yards. We're going to take that. And at 3.2, he is certainly someone that's still going to be in play for us. And that's the thing with this Matt LaFleur offense is that, sure, we're seeing that the production is probably going to be spread out, but there are going to be design plays for each player. And that's kind of the beauty of it. So I do think we are still going to get a few design plays going his way. And for what it's worth, he did end up playing 75% of the offensive snaps. Remember, that game was a blowout. They ended up playing some of their backups. So probably closer to like 80, which is a big snap share for a cheap tight end play. That's going to get 5 or so targets. And then just real quickly, some other, potential tight end options we can go with. I mentioned Adam Troutman as kind of the tight end number 1 for Denver. That ended up being true, but it also ended up being true because Greg Dulcich ended up getting banged up in that game. So we could have seen Trautman be a little bit more involved than even I thought last week. End up with 5 targets, catching all those for 34 yards. So he was min-priced last week. Now he's priced up a little bit more, $500 more, but still could be someone that you're looking at for a value tight end play. And now, guys, real quickly get into defense. For now, I'm just going to be plugging and playing the Raiders. Once again, I just go with the lowest price defense that we're going to get, and that's currently the Las Vegas Raiders. And so now we only have 3,000 left over, so we know we're going to have to make some adjustments to our builds, right? For now, and I don't love this right now, but for now I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to Jordan Love. And so we know we're still going to have to find maybe some other player to drop down from. Do we go CMC or Travis Etienne? That's my biggest question there. My issue that I have is I do think that there's a big drop off in production. I want to be capturing CMC, but also I think Travis Etienne is going to be in for a good game, especially if I'm not playing Trevor Lawrence. I want to emphasize getting Travis Etienne into my builds. And so like this is a simple pivot that you can end up doing. Just going Deebo Samuel in the flex. I do think he is at a cheap price tag, 5.6 for someone that had 7 targets, still had double-digit DraftKings points. 5.6 is a very cheap price tag. He could have easily been schemed into a touchdown in that game. Now he gets probably a better matchup going against the Rams. Very cheap price tag. I like that. And now what I don't like is ending up on Rachaad White instead of Travis Etienne, but it kind of is what it is as it sits right now. So that is what it's going to be for our first look build. Now I do want to just mention another build that I have tossed out there as well. This was another one that I thought we could potentially roll with if Aaron Jones is ruled out. I don't mind this idea. We're paying up a little bit more at quarterback. I'd probably go Trevor Lawrence here, to be honest with you. And then DeAndre Hopkins, I feel like he's at a cheap price tag. I feel like he's going to have similar production to Keenan Allen. We're probably getting like almost 30 targets between Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, and DeAndre Hopkins, and tack on Nico Collins as well. It's a very heavy target share there, most likely. So also a pretty good build there as well. And then for what's worth, one last play, David Montgomery is at a very cheap price tag for a guy that was a little bit more involved than I think anyone really imagined. The thing is, he didn't really pop off as well, as much as people would have liked. That's going to be all for this video. I know it's a long one. Make sure to give a like and subscribe, though. Let's have a good slate in week 2. And as always, let's keep cashing.